Well, good evening, and thank you for coming, and welcome to tonight's lecture, which is sponsored by the Global Public Health Program and other important entities here at the University of Montana. I'm Peter Kern, Director of the Global Public Health Program and Professor of Political Science, and I'm just really thrilled that we're going to have this event tonight for a couple of reasons. One is because I teach a course on politics of global migration, and it just seemed to me very timely to invite Mayor Collins to come down and speak to my class, which he has just done for the last hour or so. And while he was here, he graciously agreed to be willing to give a talk as well in this public forum that he's going to address tonight. So we have the unique opportunity to have two elected mayors on the program at one time. And so the, Mayor Engen of Missoula is going to do the introduction, and then Mayor Collins of Helena will give his talk, and then there'll be time for questions at the end. And if any of you are interested, we have discount flyers here for Gillian Gay's new book on African political activism in post-colonial France, and my new book on transnational mobility and global health. So, John, take it away.
Thank you, Peter. I have no book to promote this evening. I apologize for that. I had a journalism professor who once said, every journalist has a book in him, and that's where it should stay. And so far, I've been able to suppress any instincts I may have for all sorts of reasons. I'm tickled to be able to make this introduction this evening. I can't really explain, however, why I have not been invited to Helena to provide some insights, some provocative insights as to my journey, because it is fascinating. All the way from St. Patrick Hospital to my parents' home. A journey nonetheless. We have a visitor coming to Missoula tomorrow, and tonight I think is largely the antithesis of the message that will likely be delivered by that visitor. What Wilmot, whether he wanted to or not, what Wilmot represents in Montana and in Helena and tonight in our community is what I think is the best of what this country has to offer, and that is opportunity for good people to do well, and in doing well, helping others do well. It's a grand story. I will allow him to tell it because he's better at it than I am, but it really is a privilege to once again welcome the mayor of Helena, Montana to Missoula, Wilmot Collins.
Testing. Oh, I was told this is off and on. Hello? Hello? Oh, wow. You guys prefer this, right? Okay. Let me see if I can adjust it to here. And put it, you can tell I'm getting used to all this fancy stuff. You got it? You hear me? Okay. John, I want you to know that we are planning something, and you are involved in it.
The buffet?
No, it's a mayor's forum from the 7 communities, you know. We plan to get together. It's just in its infancy, so that's why you're not aware, but you'll be coming to Helena soon. And we will give you the red carpet treatment. Good evening. What?
Good evening.
Jeez, this is going to be a tough one. I mean, I can't even get a greetings from y'all. Oh, man. Anyway, when I was told that I had to talk about global migration and all of that, you cannot speak of global migration and not talk about the impact the United Nations High Commission for Refugee has on it. And I'll give you some stats and talk to you about the impact of the UN, the impact it has on migration. I said, finally, the global powers are acknowledging the need to pay close attention to international migration, especially refugees. Everything we hear on the news now, mind you, everything we hear on the news is not always true. It's good every now and then to talk to the sources. And today you're listening to a source. The UNHCR, the United Nations High Commission for Refugee, is the UN refugee agency. That is whatever, anything comes to refugees, you deal with the UNHCR. Today, in the world today, there are 25.4 million refugees. 40 million are IDPs, that is internally displaced persons, and 3.1 million are asylum seekers, which makes a total of 68.5 million men, women, and children displaced by war, terrorism, and persecution around the world. 51% of those refugees you see are kids, children. Every day, 44,000 people are forced to flee their homes because of violence and persecution. When I read this, I thought about Helena Street. I said, geez, the whole of Helena gone in one day. And some. 44,000 a day. The total number of displaced people, refugees worldwide, is equal to the combined population of California and Texas. Now, who's a refugee? Who brave enough to tell me? Come on, guys. This is a dialogue, isn't it? Okay, a refugee is a person who would flee, who is forced to flee their home country to escape persecution, war, or violence. Now, when there's a crisis in a country, the United Nations High Commission is in that country or in the nearby country within 72 hours to render aid, to render help, to render some form of comfort. And what the UNHCR would do would lead a global response. That is, most people would not have heard of the conflict. And so the UNHCR will lead that global response in informing the world about, hey, there is a crisis in Liberia, and this is what the country needs at this moment. Please help. Now, I know for sure the UNHCR is funded by governments and by private donations. And I am a product of one of those, of that UNHCR, because they assisted me. And I'll tell you, I'm from Liberia, a small West African country. Guess what? Liberia is 1/3 of Montana, 43,000 square miles. Now, what's Montana? Don't tell me.
147.
There you go. So, Liberia, but with a population of about 4 million people. So it's not that Liberia is overpopulated, but Montana is underpopulated. Liberia was established by free slaves that came from this country. They wanted to go back to Africa. And through the instrumentality, through the help, through the assistance of the American Colonization Society and Governor Monroe, Slaves were literally purchased and sent to freedom. When the slaves landed on the west coast of Africa, they named that area that they landed Liberia. Liber in Latin means free. They named that part Liberia. Even though they met the natives there, they dominated the natives, just like, which country did that? I don't know. They dominated the natives because they were taking with them education, form of government, the English language, Christianity. So they dominated the natives that were there, and they established a government. In fact, the Liberia first 12 presidents were all from down south. All of them were from down south. Liberia have very close ties to the U.S. because of the slaves going there. In fact, the U.S. sent people to help govern the slaves because they weren't sure the slaves would be able to care for themselves. And as a matter of fact, the former Homeland Security Director, Jed Johnson, you know, in the Obama administration, that name, Jed Johnson, everybody said Jay Johnson. No, it's a Liberian name. It's Jed Johnson. His grandfather was one of those sent to Liberia. And he got there, he got sick with malaria. And one of the chiefs helped him. And he promised the chief, I will name my son after you. But he didn't have a son. So that's how he named his grandson after the chief Jed. So little history there. So Liberia was Africa's first independent nation. Almost all other countries in Liberia gained their independence in the 50s and 60s. Liberia gained her independence July 26, 1847. And some similarities when the slaves arrived in Liberia. You know, I'm from Maryland, and that's Maryland in Liberia. I went to school in Virginia in Liberia. We have Louisiana, we have Georgia, we have Mississippi. Those were places the slaves lived. So when they went to Liberia and Africa, they named places they were used to. We're the only country in Africa that use the same money as you, the US dollar as our medium of exchange. Now, how many of you, by the raise of hand, how many of you have driven on a Firestone tire? Bridgestone, BF Goodrich. Did you ever think once to say, where is this material coming from? It's coming from Liberia. Liberia has the world's largest rubber plantation. We ship the rubber here and you make the tires. The largest Omega Tower, where the U.S. communicates with the Middle East and the rest of Africa, that tower is in Liberia. Do you know who declared war on Germany? It was not the USA. Liberia did it. And there's a story that said the president was looking for Liberia and his thumb was on it and he couldn't find it because it was so tiny. But Liberia declared war, and the U.S. had to use Liberian airports for refueling and all of that during World War II. So Liberia became a close ally to the U.S. But what happened was, our 19th president, William Talbot, fathers from North Carolina, became president. And he was also a Baptist minister. He was president of the Baptist World Alliance. So he was well known internationally. He became president. And one of the first things he did when he became president, he decided to establish diplomatic links with USSR. We can't seem to avoid those people. He established diplomatic links with USSR when he did that, because Liberia was a sovereign nation, but with America's close ties to Liberia, they didn't take too kindly to that. 6 months after we established diplomatic links with Russia, William Talbot, president of Liberia, was murdered in his bedroom next to his wife. The military took over Liberia. Mrs. Talbot said the person that murdered her husband was of Caucasian descent. And the only Caucasian descent we had in our military were U.S. military advisors. So you can put your 1 and 1 together and get 2 or 3 or whatever it is. But Liberia had the first military ruler. That was the first coup d'etat we had. And things didn't work out well. The military leader started, he got in. The U.S., Liberia has an army of less than 20,000 soldiers. The U.S. provided over $500 million worth of military aid. I wonder why didn't they build schools? Why didn't they build hospitals, but rather military? And the military leader built himself up and became dangerous. A lot of people fled Liberia because they couldn't live under the military regime. Things got bad. It was like this: if you couldn't say anything positive about the leader, don't you dare say anything negative. You and your family would disappear. It was that bad. So a lot of people fled Liberia. And where did they come? Right here to America. One of those that fled was Charles Taylor. And Charles Taylor fled Liberia, and the military leader decided to contact Interpol and said he was wanted back in Liberia for embezzlement. Charles Taylor was arrested here in the U.S. He was put in prison, Boston Maximum Prison. And after 3 months of being in Boston Max, Charles Taylor broke jail, fled America, went to Libya, got training, and entered Liberia. Come on, guys. How did that happen? It's not like America borders Libya. You know, when someone breaks jail, you're all over the news, right? They put out warrants. How could you get on a plane anyway? But it happened. He got training in Libya. He formed a rebel group called the National Patriotic Front, and they entered Liberia December 24th, 1989, to remove the military leader. Because the military leader had gotten too, quote unquote, big for his britches. He was getting into a lot of arguments with the U.S. Charles Taylor systematically took over the country. And I was one of those that hailed Charles Taylor for coming to Liberia. But little did we know that having child soldiers as your military force is not a good thing, because they didn't value life. He drugged those kids and sent them to the front line. And they killed indiscriminately. The first 3 months of the war, United Nations estimated 250,000 Liberians lost their lives. I know I lost 2 brothers.
So just wondering if, I want to make sure I'm following this, I don't know this with Valeria, but were you implying at the beginning that the president who was assassinated by a Caucasian were you implying that was U.S. supported as almost a response to Liberia getting?
I was not implying anything, I was just telling you the story.
But then it seems like if that whoever did that, and then suddenly you have a military leader,
Right.
and now we have this guy who came to the U.S. and got out of Boston Max,
Right.
miraculously,
Right.
back there and got trained. It almost seems Well, there's some
Because
covert stuff going on here. that-
our people could no longer work with the military leader. I think I used the terminology, he got too big for his britches. He thought he was the almighty powerful, he was not listening anymore.
So maybe initially US supported and now we're putting this other guy.
I think so. Okay, we're back to it. Where am I?
Wait, so how many people died?
The United Nations estimated 250,000 Liberians lost their lives in the first 3 months of the war. I lost 2 brothers in that war. One was murdered by the soldiers, the other was murdered by the rebels. So things got so bad. Would you forget if I don't recognize you, sir?
Was Samuel Doe the leader of that first coup?
Yes, that's correct. He was the head. And so things got so bad, West African countries got together and decided to send in a peacekeeping force to Liberia to bring calm. But Charles Taylor had already occupied 90% of the country, and he didn't want the peacekeepers come in because he felt that they were going to take over and not have him. And he fought the peacekeepers, but they were more powerful than he was. And so they came in anyway. Things got really, really bad in Liberia. I mean, it got so terrible, it got dire. There weren't any food, no water, electricity, phones, nothing. We were sort of shut out of the world. We're on our own. I know many times we went looking for food and couldn't find anything. Many times the soldiers would raid places. My wife was a medical student. I know at night, my place where I lived was dangerous, so we went to the Catholic hospital where my wife was doing her studies. And at night we would wear white coats to pretend we were doctors. And the soldiers thought one time that the rebels had gotten hold of the hospital, and they went to the hospital and raided the hospital, killed people, killed doctors. We were fortunate to have gotten out. But when you move from one place to the next place and the fighting comes there, sometimes for days you're on the floor because stray bullets are flying through. When the fighting is heavy, you're on the floor for days. I remember when we fled to my sister's place, we were on the floor for 3 days. That's how heavy the fighting was. On the 4th day, we heard yelling, "Get out, come on out." When we got out, we literally had to jump over bodies. The place was littered with bodies from the war. And so we decided that the safest place in Monrovia was the area around the American embassy. My mom, my wife, we all decided that's where we were going because they had the Marines there taking care of the property. When we got there, we had nowhere to go. We were just by the fence, standing by the fence. Our second day out in the element, someone recognized my mom and gave us a room, but no bed, nothing was in the room, but we took it gladly. Because other West African countries finally decided that we need to help Liberia. So they brought in peacekeepers. And on the first ship, they brought the first set of peacekeepers. They told Liberians if you wanted to get out of the country, you could get on the ship and go. But we had not heard about that ship, so we missed it. The second ship came with the second set of peacekeepers. This time we heard of it. It was on a Thursday. I know my mom, my wife, we all sat down in that room on the floor and prayed about leaving. We wanted to leave. And I told them, let's go. Let's go to the port tomorrow and let's leave. So we prayed about it and we decided we were leaving. The next morning, we got up, got ready at 6 o'clock in that morning, getting our stuff. My mom said, "I'm not going." I said, "Whoa, why?" She said, the Lord is not leading me. I said, the Lord is leading you because he brought a ship. That's a sign. But my mom can get stubborn. And I couldn't convince her. And I thank God every day I was only able to convince her. Because when we got to the port, the line to get on board the ship was more than a mile long. And we were at the back of the line. And I know we stayed online Friday. We stayed online Saturday. And mind you, we're online, there's no food, no water, nothing. No change of clothes. If you left your line, you're done. People just step right on up. We stayed online Sunday, 3 full days. 9:47 p.m., my wife was chosen to get on board the ship. And I'm looking at them. We're holding hands. I said, hey, she can't go without me. So he said, okay, you get on too. So the two of us got on, and 6 other people behind us, and they shut the gate. It was estimated 10,000 Liberians got on board that ship. And then I finally turned to my wife, where are we going? She said, I don't know. I said, we got on board a ship and don't know where we're going. So we're asking other people, where the ship going? Nobody knew where to go. They just wanted to get out of Liberia. So the following morning, we heard a huge splash, and then people crying. Just to find out that people's loved ones had died on board that ship. And they couldn't keep them on board. So they had to dump them overboard. And my mom was not healthy. So I know the Lord didn't lead her. Because I'm almost certain had she gone with us, 3 days standing up, and only standing room on the ship. There was only standing room. She may have passed. So I think she had a vision, she had whatever she had, she was led right. So we later found on the second day that the first stop was Ghana. And we were happy. Because Ghana, they speak English. Most of our neighbors in Liberia, they speak French. Like the Ivory Coast, Guinea, they all speak French. So my wife and I prayed that we'll go to an English-speaking country. And when we heard Ghana would be the first stop, we were happy. We got down in Ghana, and just before we left Liberia, my mom handed $5 to my wife and I and said, go in peace, God be with you. So we took the $5. When we got to Ghana, in Liberia, I used to teach. I was a middle school teacher. And with that organization called the SOS Children's Village, is in every African country, it's here too in America. The head office is in New York, European country. And when we got to Ghana, I said, I'm going to find the SOS Children's Village. So I asked my wife for the $5 she had. I stopped a cab, and I showed the address to the driver. I said, hey, I want to go to this place. And he said, yes, I can take you. I said, well, my mistake was, would $5 be enough? And he said, yes. So I handed him the $5. I later found it would have cost 50 cents. So that was my first lesson in Ghana. So I went to the village to meet with the director to ask for assistance. When I got there, now imagine you have not had food for 7 days, no change of clothes, no water. I mean, I introduced myself. The director is looking at me and said, can you identify yourself? I said, yes, I'm Wilmot Collins. He said, no, an ID? In Liberia, if you travel with ID, you were sure to die. No Liberian traveled with ID when the war started. So we left Liberia without any identification whatsoever. And I couldn't identify myself, so I couldn't prove I was Wilmot Collins. So he said, but some kids came on the first ship. If they can identify you, I'll help you. I said, please send for them. So he sent for the boys, 3. They came, when they saw me, they broke down crying. I thought they would be happy, but they were crying. So I was a little confused by that. And then he apologized. He said, I'll help you. So I asked to use the restroom. I went into the restroom. For the first time in 7 months, I looked in the mirror. When those boys knew me, I was 175 pounds. When I looked in the mirror that day, I was 90 pounds. 90. My wife was 87. That's why they were crying. We were literally dying of starvation. And whatever else we had, we didn't know. So the director decided to help us. He took us in, he gave me a van with a chauffeur, and said, go and get your family from the port. I went and got my wife, my brother-in-law, my sister. We came to the village. The very next day, I was hospitalized for 7 days. I was suffering from dehydration, from starvation, from malaria. I had everything. When I got well, he put me back in the school, and so I started teaching in the school again. My wife was a medical student. She started helping out in the clinic. So for me, life is good, right? After about 2 months, my wife had this fancy idea. She comes to me, let's go to America. I said, how do you suppose we do that? She said, in fact, let's go to Montana. I said, whoa, slow down. 1 minute you said we should go to America, the next minute you want to go to Montana. Make up your mind. She said, Montana is in America. That was the first time I heard of Montana. And I said, how do you suppose we do that? She said, I have family in Montana. I'm married to you. I didn't know you had family in Montana. What happened here is my wife was an exchange student, and she went to Helena High, and she lived with her host family. She was still in touch with her host family. In fact, her classmate was Governor Bullock. Yeah, they all graduated in 1984. So when she said she's still in touch with her host family, and she contacted them, they still had the same number. And she called them up. They were more than happy to assist, but they had no clue how to. We had no clue how to. So finally, they contacted Carroll College. So Carroll College decided to award my wife a full scholarship to do nursing, and they put me on the scholarship as her dependent. And so we went to the American Embassy to get our visas. When we got there, they told us, only one of you will go. I said, but we have all the documents. Only one of you. Either you go, Mr. Collins, and your wife stay, or your wife goes and you stay. So I said, well, my wife has the scholarship, let her go. So they awarded my wife a visa to come to America. And 2 weeks before she departed, she started getting really sick, really, really sick. She was so sick, we took her to the hospital. And I'm sitting outside waiting, and the doctor comes out, smiling, happy. Congratulations, Mr. Collins, you'll soon be a proud father. And I'm freaking out. No, my wife is going to school. He said, yeah, but she's also pregnant. And of course, that put a wrench in things, because I didn't mind my wife going. But now she was going with our daughter, and I didn't know when I would ever see them. So she convinced me. I said, okay. So my wife left August 19th, 1991. And she came to America. She went to Carroll. In the meanwhile, I'm in Africa. I'm trying to find a way to join them. I can't. Finally, I realized the only way I would be able to join my family, I had to register with the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, UNHCR. And I registered with them, and we started that vetting process. Now, do not let anybody mislead you and tell you refugees are not vetted. They're lying, outright lying. Refugees are the most vetted group coming to America. So we started our process. I had like 5 or 6 different interviews. USCIS, State Department, Homeland Security, United Nations High Commission. Go back to USCIS. And every time you're missing a document, it will be another 2 months before they even call you back for an interview. Finally, I passed all those interviews. That was, when I started the interview process, it took me maybe a year and 2-3 months to go through all those 5-6 interviews. Then I had to do the medical. Man, those doctors know more about me than I know about myself. After the medical, they had to do the cultural orientation. They teach you, when you pass the medical, you know you're going to America. And then they teach you about life in America, right? They knew I was coming to Montana. They never told me anything but this weather. I'm not kidding you. Every time people see Montana, they just smile. So I'm just thinking it's a good place, not knowing that they know this guy is going to catch hell, you know? So while we're going through the cultural orientation around November of '94 now, this is 1994. My family left 1991, it's 1994. So I called my sister. I had a sister in New Jersey. I said, can you visit my family in Montana? She said, yeah, sure. So she flew from New Jersey to Montana and visited with my family. And so I called her. I said, how's the visit? She said, you don't want to go to Montana. I said, what do you mean? She said, I was there for 4 days. It snowed for 4 days, and I didn't see any black people. And I'm like, what do you mean? Montana will be just like what we see on TV. That was how I was looking at it. Black people everywhere on TV. My sister said, no, black people not in Montana. So I called my wife up because it was very concerning to me. I called my wife, hey, how are things? Great. And this is in January 1994. I called, I said, so what's the weather like? Oh, it's pretty warm today, it's 29 degrees. So in Liberia, the average temperature is 85. My wife tells me it's pretty warm at 29. And I know water freezes at 32. So I'm trying to rationalize, and I can't get it. So I said, oh, you must not understand the temperature. Let me talk to your host mom. So Joyce comes on the phone. Hi, Joyce. What's the weather like? Oh, it's warm today, Wilmot. It's 29 degrees. So I said, Joyce, what is it when it's cold? She said, oh, sometimes 30 below. I said, below what? She said, below 0. So if you have ever seen a confused person, you're looking at one. I was totally confused. Because where I'm from, when it's cold, it's 60 degrees. And we're wearing sweaters and jackets. I remember seeing Johnny shorts and slippers at 50 degrees. So I called my wife back on the phone. I said, so has Jamie, our daughter, seen a black person? She said, oh yeah, there's a black boy in my school. I said, did you just say a black boy? She said, yeah, what? I said, that means you're saying there's one. So where is this Montana? It's warm at 29. It's cold at 30 below. There is a black boy in the school. Where is this? So don't worry, you will like it. You will love it. This. So the day came for me to leave Montana. To leave Africa. I called my sister. I said, I'm coming to America. I'm going to Montana. My family's there. She said, you will regret it. She said, okay, I'll meet you at JFK. Whatever I bring to JFK, you put on before going to Montana. So I said, okay, I will. So my sister met me at JFK Airport. We spent the night at a hotel, and then the next morning I'm getting dressed. I had this huge bag of clothes. I remember what my sister told me. She had 2 sets of long johns in it. I put 2 sets on. And you have no idea how difficult it is to put on 2 sets of long johns. I put on 2 sets of long johns. It had a turtleneck and a vest, and then this big. Have you seen the Michelin Man? That's me. But what she didn't say was, I'll be in the airport and I'll be on the plane. So flying from JFK to Salt Lake City, I was the only person on the plane sweating. Everybody was comfortable except me. I am sweating. So I took off my jacket, and then my seatmate looks at me. How many layers are you wearing? I said, you don't want to know. So when we landed in Salt Lake, I quickly ran into the restroom, took off a few layers, and felt comfortable. Got on board the plane from Salt Lake to Helena. We're coming to Helena now. As soon as I sat in the plane, this guy sat next to me. And he said, you must be Wilmot. Think about it. I'm coming from Africa. I'm on the plane, and this guy is calling my name. I was freaking out. I said, whoa, 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 who are you? He said, oh, no. I'm Craig Baker. My family awarded your wife the scholarship to do nursing, and I heard you were coming, and I just came to meet you. I said, oh, your mom is Shirley. He said, yeah. And so we talked the whole ride, you know. And then we're descending into Helena, and the pilot gets on the intercom. It's sunny and warm at 32 degrees in Helena, Montana. And I'm freaking out because 32 is freezing. It's ice, right? And this guy says sunny and warm. So Craig is by the window, right? And I'm the aisle seat, and he had the window open. So when we landed, I'm looking out the window to look around. At 32 degrees, I saw people in shorts. Shorts. People were wearing shorts. So we got to the airport, man. This huge banner, welcome home. The Carroll College band, the Helena High School band, they're all there playing boom, boom, boom. Like some president coming to. They forgot it was a refugee. Like some president. And I got there, I was just looking. I saw my wife with my daughter, and I'm looking at her, and she puts our daughter down. I said, there's Daddy, go to Daddy. And I didn't want to go to her. She didn't know me, and I didn't want to startle her. So my daughter starts to walk to my direction, and I stopped, and she's walking. And then something just told her to run, and she started running towards me. I ran towards her, and for the first time, my daughter's 2 years old, and I'm touching her for the first time. I dropped on my knees in the airport and just started screaming. And so we went to the Knoxheim home, our host family, Bruce and Joyce Knoxheim. Bruce was assistant principal at Helena High, and Joyce was an elementary school teacher at Bryant. And every morning, Bruce would get up and go to school. I would jump in his truck with him and walk around Helena. So on my 3rd day, I walked further than usual. I saw the Capitol building. You know, it's beautiful. So I walked up the stairs to the Capitol, opened it up, went in. To my right, Office of Secretary of State. To my left, Office of Governor. Where do you think I went? I went to the governor. I said, I'm going to meet the governor. So I got there, and this lady in the front desk stopped me. Do you have an appointment, sir? I said, no. She said, would you like to make one? I said, yes, ma'am. So I'm writing my name down. And this guy comes behind me and said, may I help you? I said, no, sir, I'm here to meet the governor. He said, well, I am the governor. I'm Mark Roscoe. I said, oh, happy to meet you, sir. He said, what can I do for you? I said, well, I just came from Africa last week, and I thought I should come and meet you. So he said, what part of Africa? I said, Liberia. He said, oh, where the slaves went. He knew a little history of Liberia. He said, where the slaves went? I said, yeah. He said, come on in. And I went in the governor's office. My first 4 days of landing, I bet half of you haven't even been there. I went there. I walked in his office, and he said, so what do you do? I pulled my resume out of my pocket, handed it to him. Special ed. He called, Pat, would you come in? Pat Lopez, he called her in. And so what can we do for Mr. Collins? And he handed my resume to her. She looked at it. She said, oh, Inner Mountains Children's Homes looking for counselor. Why don't you apply and use me as your reference? And I'm like, yeah, sure. The following week, I had an interview. I started working. That was my first job. And after that, I never looked back. I joined the military. I just retired from the military after 22 years, June 1st. I started teaching. And life's been good. So I always tell my sister, since I became mayor, you almost cost me my mayorship. If I had left Helena, I would not be mayor today. So anyway, do you have questions for me? Yes, ma'am.
Run for mayor.
What's that?
What prompted you to run for mayor of Helena?
You know, I have 2 kids. My son, I always told my family, I'm going to run for public office one day. But every time it comes close, I'll backpedal and back out. I was too scared. I didn't even know what to do. So my son was a senior here, at the university. Yeah, this is U of M. My son just graduated this year from this university. So last year he went to me, he said, Dad, we need to talk. So I said, yeah, sure, what's going on? Because if he drove all the way from Missoula to talk to me, it got to be serious, right? So he said, we need to talk. I said, yeah, what's going on? He said, I don't want Mom to hear, so let's go out. So we left and went to the windbag. And the only thing I'm thinking about, oh my God, this guy has someone's pregnant. Because why wouldn't he want his mom to hear? You know? So I said, what's going on? Is a girl pregnant? He said, no, Dad, that's gross. I said, oh, thank you. So he said, Dad, I think this year is your year. You need to run. I said, run for what? He said, run for public office. You always said you would run, so this is your year. I said, tell me why you think I'm qualified to run for public office. He said, you have the education, right? I said, yeah. He said, you're very personable. A lot of people know you. You know a lot of people. I said, but you're forgetting one thing, right? He said, what's that? And then I did this. I said, you're forgetting this. He said, Dad, remember what you told me in the 9th grade? I said, no, I don't. I told you a lot of things. You're a senior in college. You think I remember what I told you in the 9th grade? He said, I'll tell you what you told me. You know, you never know these kids are listening. You never really know. You give them all the advice, you think it's just going in and coming out here. So he started to tell me, and I knew exactly what he was saying. He said, remember when I was leaving middle school and didn't want to go to school because I was going to the high school. I was too afraid. I didn't want to go to class. You took me by the hand. You carried me to my first class and opened the door. And he said, you see all those kids in there? You were all born in at St. Peter's Hospital. All of you played sports together. All of you did everything together. Go in there and shine. Nobody's better than you. Go in there and shine. He said, now, Dad, I'm telling you, Jim Smith is no better than you. You got to go and register and go take him on. And I'm like, my own advice has come back to haunt me. So I told him, I'll do it if you tell your mom. He said, oh no, that's your wife, you tell her. You know, and the reason we're battling, my wife does not like politics. She will not go near her with a 10-foot pole. And so the hardest part about this whole getting involved was telling my wife. After she agreed to be a part of it, it was smooth sailing after that. But that's how it started. Yes, ma'am.
In talking about migration, you asked to define a refugee, but I wonder if there are what you consider climate refugees.
When you say climate refugee, what do you mean?
You know, or environmental refugees, let's say that. From places where the climate is changing, farming is difficult.
You know,
seas are
I would
bad.
say yes, but it will not only be that, because I know in parts of Sudan, drought has taken over that people had to leave because of that. They'll leave that area or leave the country and go elsewhere. And so if you're talking about environmental, because of drought in parts of Africa, yes. Yes. All the way in the back.
Did you become a U.S. citizen?
What do you think?
So, but I'm just wondering
Yes.
the process.
Yes, 12 years ago.
Okay.
Can you talk a little bit about raising your kids in an environment that maybe isn't as diverse as you had hoped it would be when you first came here?
You know, and that's what my son, he always said, Dad, we had the worst life growing up because we had to deal with two cultures. Yes, it wasn't easy because I still remember we had to be involved in every step of the way. Even when they were in kindergarten, I went to the school almost every day to participate in the class. When they did Montessori. And Montessori is a good program, but it's like going back to school for the adults because you are involved every step of the way. And so they did that, and we were involved all the way. And things got difficult for sometimes. But surprisingly, my daughter handled it better than my son did. Things brushed off her, you know. People would say negative things sometimes, and she would come home. And I remember the first time she came home crying, said, she called the friend name. She said, this person said, I'm black, and I know I'm not black. I said, okay. Who are you? She said, I'm brown. I said, oh, okay, yeah, you're brown, that's fine. I said, what about me? She said, you're dark brown. And mom's tan. So everybody in my house had their own color. But what she was referring not to race, but rather to the color. And so she had that struggle, and they all had that, you know, little struggle here and there. When kids hear some negative stuff, they'll say some negative stuff. But we always try to keep them grounded, knowing that, oh, it was kids. And I still remember with my son, one of his classmates said, I can't play with you because my mom says you're dirty. And he comes home angry. I'm not going back to that school. I'm never going back to that school. I said, whoa, stop. What's going on? And he called the little girl and he said, she says I'm dirty. And I know I shower. I said, yes, I know you shower. But are you dirty? No, I'm not. I said, so don't worry about it. I'm not going back to that school. So I said, would it make a difference if I took you to school tomorrow? He said, yes. So the next day we got ready. Instead of him riding the bus, I went with him to school. And when I entered the class, the teacher I saw fright on her face, sort of. And she came straight over to me. Mr. Collins, I'm so sorry. I did not know how to react when I heard her say that. And then I said, may I do an exercise with the students? And she was a little hesitant. I said, no, it's age appropriate. She said, okay. So I went home. The next day I went to the class. I had 4 sheets of paper. 4 sheets of paper, that's all. The first sheet was white, second sheet brown, third sheet black, fourth sheet had the 3 colors on it. And then I showed it to the class. I said, which one do you like? What do you think they went to? The 4th sheet. They had all 3 colors. That's what they liked. And then I called my son up, I called the Native American, I called the Caucasian, I said, that's what happened when you're together, you're beautiful. So there's no need for name calling. When you're together, you're this picture. And so that was my exercise. So I turned to leave, the teacher is in the corner crying. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. But at the end of the day, I wanted to hear my son's reaction. And so I went to the bus stop waiting for him, and he comes. As soon as he got there, Dad, I got a girlfriend. I said, the exercise was not for you to get a girlfriend. But the same girl that called him dirty was his girlfriend now. And this remained close until they graduated from this university. They remained that close. So, you know, I still think that it's not about kids, it's about us adults. Yes, ma'am.
Was your mother ever able to come?
Yes, my mom was able to come. She lived, she's crazy. My mom lived with us. Yeah, my mom lived with us for many, many years, 15 plus years. And then finally she said, this place is too cold, I want to go to Minnesota. I said, it's colder in Minnesota. So she's in Minnesota right now with my sister.
Has anybody approached you about running for governor in 2018?
Do I have the right to remain silent? No.
I think you'd be a great choice.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Oh, so your question's finished? Oh.
Tell us a little bit about the connection between the Civil War and the outbreak of Ebola.
Well, Liberia, before the crisis, Liberia was a well-established country. In fact, all my professors, my undergraduate was in political science and sociology. All my professors were Fulbright scholars. All right? And I went to Firestone schools. All my teachers from elementary school growing up, you know, Firestone's an American company. And so the expatriates had their families with them, and we all went to the same schools. We had top-notch schools in Liberia. But when the war hit Liberia and people fled the country, Liberia still has brain drain. It's empty. And so when the Ebola hit Liberia, we could not handle it because medical practitioners were gone. The hospitals were almost empty when it came to nurses and doctors and all of that. And so that's why it was so bad. Over 2,000 people lost their lives in a matter of weeks. But the Firestone Hospital, credit to the Firestone Hospital, that my sister managed, they were able to get that under control. And it was through the help from Firestone, Bridgestone in Akron, Ohio. They're sending equipment, sending this, sending that. And Firestone area was the first area to have been secured. And then they started, whatever they did, they started mimicking it elsewhere in Liberia. That's how it came under control. Yes, ma'am.
Mayor Collins, you have woven a very wonderful story. And I think we would all commend you on your storytelling. And where
Thank you.
you are today was no small feat. So my question is, what do you perceive your purpose to be going forward?
I got 4 years to take care of the people of Helena, Montana. No, that's a wide question because I ran for mayor and I won. And so I promised the people of Helena, Montana that I would provide them the service they need for the next 4 years. But I don't know. I keep hearing all the little birds keep talking all kinds of stuff to me. Tell me, no, 2020, do something other than just mayor. I said, whoa, the Helena people will not like you, don't tell them that. Because, you know, we're working in Helena. We're doing things in Helena. Things are moving smoothly. And so, but the future looks okay. And I'll stick to that, that's all. Yes?
So I grew up in a pretty much all-white community, and I was wondering if there's a way that you know of, besides in the classroom, to make it so that children who grow up in an all-white community with racist parents aren't racist themselves as adults.
I'll tell you this, I think we have hope, and the hope is in the kids. We really do have hope, because I've noticed that when kids leave homes or leave their homes and go to and get out, they see that there's more than just my home. There's more than just, because all it took for my son to have a lifelong friend was 4 sheets of paper. And they're friends today from first grade. So when kids experience those things, they know there's more than just what mom or dad told them. Believe me, kids are resilient. And so I guess you can do my exercise. I think it's a good exercise. It worked. I had the teacher crying, and I found a girlfriend for my son. So, you can't beat that, right? Any other question? Yes, sir.
What do you think the biggest misconception people have about refugees is?
Well, there's several. One of them is refugees are just here to soak up our resources. They're not going to contribute to the community. They're not going to be Americans. They will stick to their own ways. And I hate to say, but I proved them wrong. Because, and I will tell you this though, 1994, when I came, you would not understand a word I was speaking. When I went to Inner Mountain Children's Home, I still remember Buddy saying, "Can you repeat what you just said?" And I really thought I was speaking English. I just that my accent was so heavy. Nobody understood me. I had to go slow, very slow, deliberately slow for people to understand. But what I'm trying to say, we do assimilate, we do get involved, we do want the better life for our families. And another thing is, when they say, oh, refugees are terrorists, they're coming here and bringing terrorism, that hurts. Because that person that's saying that have no clue what it takes for a refugee to come into this country. If you notice, all the people that are involved in, or 99.999% of the people that are involved in terrorism in this country, or bad deeds, are not refugees. But yet still, we can't seem to break that stigma. It's sad when I hear people say refugees are terrorists. No, we're not. Who do you know? They can't point to any, but they will still say it. Any other question? Yes, ma'am.
So when you're talking about assimilation, I'm doing a group project for local leadership here at the university, and I was wondering, would you have any advice for people who are trying to assimilate into a new culture because they are refugees?
You know, it's not easy, but I always tell people 3 things. If you can leave your country and come to this U.S., these United States, you have talent. Use your talents. When you use your talents, you're getting involved in your community. Get involved. When you get involved in your community, people will get to know you. Participate in anything. You won't be, people couldn't even understand me, but you know the one time they could understand me? When I was singing in the church choir. I don't know what about that, but singing, you lose all your accent. And every time I sing, people don't even think, people think I'm a country western dude. Because when they hear me singing, and then they will do double take and say, oh, geez, it's a black guy singing. But yeah. What's that?
Can we hear a little bit?
What do you want to hear? Jeez, you're killing me here. Okay, let me see. Oh yeah, my favorite song. I'll sing my favorite country song for you. And it's by Brooks and Dunn. You know Brooks and Dunn? You know Neon Moon? When the sun goes down on my side of town, that lonesome feeling comes through my door. The whole world turns blue.
Cool, thank you. So, somehow Mayor Collins got away without talking about potholes. What the hell, people? Wilmot, we are grateful for you taking the time to be here to tell your story, to share your wisdom and your enthusiasm for this place we all call home. You're welcome anytime here, and thank you all for your kindness and attention. Great to see you, my friend.
Thank you.